She was just trying to escape the city. No headlines, no spotlight. But when the SUV died in the middle of the desert, she thought it was the worst day of her life. Then a weathered trucker stopped. He opened his trailer to offer fuel. But inside, something that left her speechless. She came looking for silence, but found a secret that would awaken her soul and change hundreds of lives forever. Hit like and comment where you're watching from. Your support brings more amazing stories. Now, let's begin. The desert stretched endlessly in every direction. Just dry wind, cracked earth, and a sun that showed no mercy. Natalie Burns wiped sweat from her brow as the luxury SUV sputtered and rolled to a silent stop. The fuel gauge blinked red. No signal, no shade, no help. She stepped out slowly, shielding her eyes. Nothing but shimmering heat on the horizon. Her shoes crunched against the gravel shoulder as she looked up and down the barren highway. There was no one, no cars, no hope. Natalie was no stranger to crisis. She had built one of the world's most powerful tech companies from a dorm room. But out here, stripped of titles, reception, and assistants, none of it mattered. She was just a woman alone in the desert, and the silence was starting to roar. Time passed. The sun climbed higher. Her water bottle was empty. The air inside the car had turned into an oven. She tried not to panic, but her breathing got shallow. She leaned against the hood, staring down the road, praying for anything, anyone. That was when she heard it. A low rumble. At first, she thought it was her imagination. Then dust lifted on the horizon, and the shape of a long-haul truck emerged like a mirage becoming real. It drew closer, slowed, then finally came to a stop beside her. The engine idled as the driver door opened with a groan. A rugged man in his late 50s stepped down. Sun-beaten skin, gray beard, ball capped low over his eyes. He said nothing at first, just looked at her, then at the SUV. "Out of gas?" he asked, voice rough like gravel. She nodded, blinking back a wave of emotion. "Yeah. Yeah." The man gave a quiet sigh, turned, and walked toward the back of his trailer. Without another word, he unlocked the latch and opened the heavy doors. Natalie followed, expecting a spare gas can, but when the door swung open, she froze. Inside were crates neatly stacked and labeled. Water, food, baby formula, first aid. And taped to each box were handwritten notes. "You matter. You are not forgotten. Keep going." Natalie blinked in disbelief. "What is all this?" The trucker looked back at her, shrugging like it was no big deal. "Just things folks need out where no one remembers they exist." Her throat tightened. This was no ordinary delivery, and this was no ordinary trucker. Natalie stood motionless, staring into the trailer as the dry wind swept her hair across her face. This was no supply drop for a grocery store. This was something else, personal, quiet, and deliberate. The trucker reached into the corner and pulled out a small fuel container. "Here," he said, handing it to her without fanfare. "It'll get you to the next town." She barely registered it, still focused on the notes. "We believe in you. This food was packed with love. Who wrote these?" The trucker paused, then scratched his beard. "We all do. The ones who run this route." "We?" she asked. He gave a small nod and looked out toward the desert. "There's a few of us. Drivers who run back roads. Places maps forget. Folks out here, they're not invisible to us." Natalie stared at him, stunned. "So, this is all from truckers? We chip in, pick up supplies on our own dime. Some of us handwrite the notes when we stop for rest. Nobody tells us to. We just do it." She looked back into the trailer, her voice barely above a whisper. "How long have you been doing this?" He squinted into the sun. 8 years, give or take. 8 years. No recognition, no social media videos, no GoFundMe, just quiet compassion. It shook her more than she expected. She followed as he secured the doors and climbed back into the truck's cab. "Where are you going now?" He glanced at her. "Out past that ridge. Little spot called Dry Creek. You can tag along if you want." She hesitated for only a moment, then nodded. They drove in silence, the highway giving way to dirt trails. The desert unfolded like an ancient secret. After nearly an hour, they pulled into a small cluster of trailers and shacks. Some made of scrap wood, others just patched tents. Children ran barefoot in the dust. Elderly women sat under torn awnings. A makeshift sign read, "Welcome to Dry Creek. Population, Symbol and Pulitiga." And there, as if it were completely normal, 2 more trucks were parked, their drivers unloading boxes, water, food, medicine. Quiet nods. No cameras. Natalie stepped out and took it all in. The dry eyes, cracked lips, grateful smiles. She turned to the trucker. "Why do you all do this?" His voice was soft, like the answer had lived in him forever. "Because somebody has to." For the first time in years, Natalie felt something move inside her. Not power, not ambition, but purpose. And she was not leaving this place the same woman who had arrived. Natalie sat on an overturned bucket near the edge of the settlement, watching the sun dip low behind the ridge. The desert glowed gold and orange, but her focus was on the movement around her. Truckers lifting boxes, handing out bottled water, gently helping an elderly man fix his crutch with duct tape and a piece of scrap wood. No shouting, no orders, just quiet acts of care. She had built corporate headquarters that towered above cities. Yet here, with no concrete, no suits, and no tech, she was witnessing something far more powerful. A little girl, barefoot and smiling shyly, offered her a piece of dried fruit. Natalie accepted it with a soft, "Thank you," trying not to choke up. Earl, the trucker who found her, approached and sat beside her. "She likes you," he said, nodding toward the girl. Natalie smiled. "This place, these people, why hasn't anyone helped them before?" "They're too far from boats and headlines," Earl replied. "No one sees them, so they don't exist, except to us." Natalie looked around again. "You do all this and never ask for anything." Earl gave a quiet laugh. "Nope, not looking for medals, just doing what feels right." Natalie grew quiet. Her mind had shifted into another gear, not the corporate kind, but something deeper. She asked to see more. Earl took her to the back of the settlement. There she saw a broken water pump surrounded by empty containers. A woman tried to filter brown water through an old T-shirt. Children waited nearby with plastic cups. Her heart broke. Back in the truck, as stars began to dot the sky, Natalie opened her phone. Signal returned faintly, just enough. She tapped a few names: executives, engineers, logistics heads, her team, people who owed her favors and knew how to move fast. She kept her voice low. "I need clean water system, mobile solar grids, modular clinics. I want boots on the ground in 48 hours. On the other end, silence. Then someone asked, "Where are you?" She smiled faintly. "Exactly where I'm supposed to be." By the time she hung up, Earl had quietly been listening. He looked at her differently now, not with suspicion, but with realization. "You ain't just a traveler, are you?" Natalie met his eyes. "Not today." The desert had shown her something no boardroom ever could. And now she was going to repay the lesson tenfold. Morning came with a thrum of distant rotors. The children of Dry Creek ran to the edge of the ridge, pointing as black dots appeared on the horizon. Helicopters, trucks, vans. Dust swirled as they descended like a promise from the sky. Natalie stood beside Earl, arms crossed, eyes fixed. She had made a dozen calls last night. She didn't expect them all to answer, but they did. Within an hour, the silence of the desert was broken by organized chaos. Engineers in high-visibility vests began surveying land. A mobile medical unit unfolded like origami. Portable solar arrays were being installed beside tents. Workers unpacked filtration equipment and stacked bricks for a foundation. Natalie had approved a modular school and clinic to be built simultaneously. Earl just stood there chewing the end of a toothpick. "All this? Just like that?" Natalie nodded. "No red tape, no press releases, just results." A woman named Rosa, who had been living in Dry Creek for 12 years, stood nearby clutching her son's hand. Her eyes welled up as she looked at the rows of clean water tanks being rolled out. "We prayed for help," she whispered, "but we never expected it would come in helicopters." Natalie knelt down and smiled. "You deserved it long before today." As the day wore on, Natalie walked from one station to another, checking blueprints, talking to contractors, asking mothers what they needed most. This was not charity, it was partnership. By afternoon, she called for a gathering beneath a canvas shade the engineers had quickly assembled. Earl and the other truckers stood in the back, uncomfortable in the spotlight. Natalie stepped forward holding a small handwritten note she had pulled from Earl's trailer the day before. It read, "You matter. You are not forgotten." She held it up and said, "I came here because I ran out of fuel. But the truth is, I was empty long before that." She paused, looking at the faces around her. These truckers, they are the ones who showed me what it means to serve without expecting anything in return. So I'm not here to lead. I'm here to follow their example. The crowd applauded softly, many wiping tears. Earl looked down, shaking his head like it was no big deal, but Natalie saw him blink faster than usual. In the background, a crane began setting the first solar water purifier in place. The desert was changing, and so was she. 3 months later, Dry Creek was no longer just a forgotten dot in the desert. A low hum filled the air, not from desperation, but from progress. Children laughed as they raced along the gravel paths outside a brightly painted modular school. Solar panels lined the rooftops of small prefab homes. The clinic stood proud in the center, with a sign that simply read, "You matter." Inside, a nurse checked on a baby born just last week, the first delivery in the community with real medical care. Natalie walked through it all quietly. No press, no entourage. She was dressed simply in jeans and a worn button-down, clipboard in one hand, the desert wind tugging at her hair. Beside her, Earl strolled slowly, taking it all in. "You did all this," he said finally, voice softer than she had ever heard it. She shook her head. "We did. You started it long before I got here." Earl gave a rare smile and looked out at the water tower rising in the distance. "Ain't gonna lie, it's nice seeing this place breathe again." That afternoon, a small ceremony was held beneath the canvas shade they had first gathered under. The community had insisted. A young girl handed Natalie a wooden plaque etched with the words, "For the one who remembered us." Natalie accepted it with mist in her eyes, then turned to hand it back. "This belongs to all of you, especially the ones who were already here helping when no one was looking." She stepped aside, motioning toward the truckers lined up along the back, dusty and uncomfortable. The crowd turned and applauded. Earl tried to wave it off, but Natalie leaned in. "You better take that in, Earl. You deserve it." He gave her a look of mock annoyance, then tipped his hat. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, trucks began to rumble to life again. A new route, a new settlement, a new set of forgotten people waiting somewhere in the dust. Earl was the last to climb into his cab. Natalie stood by the door, arms folded. "Still going?" she asked. He looked down at her. "Long as there's people out there who feel invisible," she smiled. "Then I'll be right behind you." He nodded, then drove off into the dusk. Natalie turned back toward Dry Creek. Children were chasing a soccer ball. Rosa was handing out fresh vegetables from a garden that hadn't existed a month ago. Life was blooming in a place where hope had once withered, all because a trucker stopped and a woman chose to stay.